A splash of blue swirls onto the screen. RBLV, Resource for Blind Low Vision. A walk through the revised O&MSRS.
Welcome to a walkthrough of the revised O&M Severity Rating Scale. This presentation is provided by Michigan Department of Education, Resource for Blind and Low Vision. I'm Dr. Amanda English, and with me is Sarah Crutchlow. We are education consultants for MDE RBLV. We are both certified orientation and mobility specialists, as well as teacher consultants for the visually impaired. We're so glad you can join us for this presentation. All right, let's take a look at our agenda. We're going to go through the history and overview. We will be introducing the O&MSRS revised document, and we'll talk about scoring and additional service time. Today, we're going to take you through this process of the orientation and mobility rating scale redesign. We'll begin by talking a bit about where it came from, the original O&MSRS and the O&MSRS Plus, and then we'll look at the newly designed O&MSRS. Some of the graphics on the slides are snapshots of the part of the document we're discussing. We will not be reading through every piece of the document, but we will highlight features of the sections. If you wish to download a copy to read it in its entirety, the document is completely accessible on our website. We will tell you how to locate it during this presentation, and we will talk you through the scoring of the document and adding the additional service time.
Thanks, Amanda. So Michigan has always been on the forefront of providing quality services for students who are blind and low vision. We have a team of professionals across the state that have always worked together to create documents such as our AT guidelines, Braille classes, ILS resources, severity rating scales, and so many other things. We've had the opportunity to talk with professionals across the country, and people love to use Michigan resources. This has been very true of the O&M-SRS and the O&M-SRS Plus. In 2023, Beth Brabs, a former MDE RBLV consultant, and Amanda began looking at the O&M-SRS and the O&M-SRS Plus. Then Amanda and I continued that process in 2024. We discussed some of the challenges we saw when using the documents, as well as comments we had heard from those using the documents across the state and the country. Much has changed since the document's first implementation. Our MARS rules was in the process of being changed. Students with additional needs are now the majority of our BLV students. Students with behavioral and absent considerations are required to receive services the same as all other students with appropriate supports. So in the original documents, O&M specialists often question how to apply the additional plus minus considerations, and it left them unclear on how to score service needs. This led to inconsistencies in scores even within a student's team. What was meant to be an objective tool was open to subjectivity. The RBLV team began considering changes and proposed a new design that would combine the original O&M-SRS with the O&M-SRS Plus. We began changing verbiage to reduce subjectivity. Once we began feeling comfortable with our ideas, we knew that we needed to talk to the stakeholders in the field and draw on their expertise. We pulled in 6 school-based comms from around the state to begin helping us scrutinize every piece of the document. We began looking for support resources, removing some sections, adding in new considerations, and providing a newly updated rubric. When we consulted with 4 additional comms who were not part of the original conversation and who were highly experienced O&M instructors to explore the document and then provide us feedback and potential changes.
The document can be located on our website. Before we dive in, let's look at how to find the document. First, go to www.rblv.org. Along the top, you'll find a menu. Select School Personnel. When you click on it, a super menu will display several categories. In the right column, you'll look for RBLV planning tools. Notice the red oval circling RBLV. And the first topic under that heading is the severity rating scales. Again, there's a red oval showing you where it is. When you click on the severity rating scales, you'll see both the Vision Services Severity Rating Scale and the Orientation and Mobility Severity Rating Scale revised. And I'll show you that on the next slide. Here you can see the Vision Services Severity Rating Scale 2.0 is listed first, and the O&M-SRS revised is second. You'll click on the blue download O&M-SRS box. I've circled that in a red oval to show you where to find it at the bottom. The accessible PDF document is free to download, and once you download it, save it to your device, and you can duplicate it as many times as you need for your load. When you look at the new O&M-SRS revised document, you'll notice some similarities to the previous documents, but also some significant changes. If you're familiar with the new Vision Services Severity Rating Scale 2.0, we followed that model. We started out with an introduction, history, and rationale. The O&M-SRS was developed to assist certified orientation and mobility specialists in making recommendations for services for students who are blind or low vision in Michigan. The original documents were developed around 2008 by the Michigan O&M Task Force, led by Susan Bradley, a former Michigan education consultant and comms, and several O&M specialists across the state. It was slightly revised in 2017. The O&M-SRS was used for BLV students with no other disabilities, and the O&M-SRS Plus was for those with additional needs. This worked for the field for a long time, but as caseload demographics, placements, and rules changed, it was time to take a deeper look at both documents to see what was still working and what needed to be updated. The O&M-SRS is a living document and should represent the current best practices for students who are blind or low vision. We also know that it's a tool to be used for all BLV students receiving O&M, regardless of their educational placement. In 2014, the original documents were validated by Wall, Emerson, and Anderson. In 2024, a group of comms across Michigan met to discuss the original documents, and these discussions led to the revised O&M-SRS. The rationale for revising the new document included the change in the Michigan Administrative Rules for Education, Rule for Visual Impairment, in 2023, and there was a change in how students were qualified for services.
Thank you, Amanda. So you will want to conduct a functional vision evaluation, your O&M evaluation, and an expanded core evaluation first. These are needed to answer the questions within the document. It is important to note that this document is not an evaluation. It is a guidance document for helping your IEP team determine an appropriate amount of service time. It is only a guidance document, so your team will make the final determination on whether more or less time is needed based on the student's needs. Notice that this is the purpose and development section, and we suggest using this for students in preschool through 12th grade. As has always been the case, you'll want to have your functional vision evaluation, O&M evaluation, and medical information gathered prior to completing the O&M-SRS. This document is not an evaluation, like I stated before, but a guide for considering service time. You may consider completing the O&M-SRS for an initial assessment, the IEP team, after progress reporting, or after there are changes in vision, placement, or service needs. We've provided some suggested steps for the evaluation of the student, including the assessing the student to determine their strengths and needs using a variety of assessment tools. Complete this document to determine service delivery times and additional needs, and include recommendations of O&M services in the report and share it at the IEP meeting. So there are 7 categories for this document. There's impact of vision on access to the environment. There's use or proficiency of travel tools, independence in travel in current familiar environments, independence in travel in unfamiliar environments, conceptual understanding, complexity or acquisition of skills, and assistive technology. So now we're going to dive into the steps to complete the rubric. The person completing the rubric will want full understanding of what they are working on and how to score the information prior to scoring. The numbers attached to each severity of need are considered part of a continuum. For each category, enter the appropriate severity of need score, and it will auto-calculate to create the score that will lead to determining part 1, which is the frequency of need. The frequency of need is how often the student needs instruction. The severity of need is broken into 5 numerical scores, 0 to 4, per each category.
All right, let's dive into part 1, the O&M-SRS Revised Severity of Need Profile. Throughout the presentation, each slide has a graphic of the section of the document I'm talking about. I'm not going to read through each graphic, as you can access the entire document in a fully accessible format for free on the rblv.org website. I will speak through the pieces I am highlighting to ensure everyone is getting the content that I want you to grasp from this presentation. All right. So before we dive into the impact of vision on access to the environment, please note the demographic component currently highlighted in red. This section is where you're going to fill in your student's name, birth date, grade, and the date you're filling out the form. Number 1 is the impact of vision on access to the environment. Again, this is highlighted in red. The document, it documents the types of environments in which students' visual function or future need may affect travel. So travel environments may include, but are not limited to, orientation and/or navigation in the school, home or community, sidewalk travel, rural travel, street crossings in residential areas, semi-business or business areas, stair travel, environmental conditions, inclement weather, full sun, dark, atypical travel, and public transportation. You'll determine the score on the number of areas the student's visual function impacts travel. The rubric is circled in red. It's designed so 0 is the least impact and 4 is the most impact. If you have a student who is impacted in 4 or more of the areas, you'll select 2 for their score. Then you'll place the 2 in the score box down where the red oval is, and it will auto-calculate in the total severity of need score that shows up on page 9. All right, number 2 is use and proficiency of travel tool. This can be a cane, an alternate mobility device. Here you'll document the level the student uses their travel tool. So their cane, their AMD, whatever they're using for their travel. And you'll score the section using 0 through 4 based on the student's level of skill. So for example, if the student's safety or efficiency when using their travel tool is impacted during travel in only unfamiliar environments, you'll score a 2. But if their skill is impacted in all familiar and unfamiliar environments, you'll score a 4. Again, you're going to place that score in the fillable box at the bottom where the red oval is. All right, number 3, independence and travel, familiar environments. Document the student's travel in familiar environments. Document prompts by tallying the number of prompts given in the session. The comms in the student will predetermine how the prompts may be administered. One prompt is equivalent to each touch or verbal direction. Examples of prompts: touching the student to remind them when to turn, a physical and verbal prompt at the same time, giving directions to a location the student has traveled before, using reminder cards for directions or signs for turns to a location the student has traveled before. Students' travel should be scored as compared to peers within their geographic area. It should be noted that students who live in urban settings should have opportunities for instruction in rural areas and vice versa. Considerations should be made for the student's age-appropriate skills, safety, cognitive supports, current and potential needs. You'll score the student's level by looking at the number of prompts needed for travel in familiar environments. For example, if the student needs 1 or 2 prompts for travel in a current familiar environment, you would score them a 1. Number 4, independence in travel, unfamiliar areas. Like the previous section, now you'll score the student based on the number of prompts needed in an unfamiliar area. If the student needs 7 or more prompts in this area, you'll score a 4. Number 5, conceptual understanding. Select the level that best describes the student's conceptual understanding. Conceptual understanding looks at the following concepts for development of travel skills: body awareness and movement, which is understanding body planes, proprioception, etc. Laterality, directionality, this is left, right, up, down, compass directions. Quantitative and comparative, this is sizes, time, distance, big, small, short, tall, measurement types of things. Positional, 90-degree turns, 180-degree turns, parallel, perpendicular. And then environmental, descriptions of rural, urban, classroom, school. Using these areas, you'll determine how many of the areas the student needs instruction in. If the student needs instruction in body awareness, laterality, positional concepts, and environmental, they have 4 areas, so they would score a 4 in this area. Again, write that score in the box below, and it will continue to auto-calculate in the severity of need score on page 9. Number 6, complexity or acquisition of skill. Next, you'll consider the student's skill acquisition. This section is based on how long it will take the student to gain a skill. The amount of time will likely depend on the frequency of lessons, but if a student needs 20 lessons to gain a skill, then they'd score a 3. To determine the level of skill acquisition, we use the framework of 9 weeks per quarter, 1 to 3 lessons per week. And however, you may have a student that can acquire the skills more quickly, and they may not need a weekly lesson. Here are some things that you might consider. How long does it take the student to learn the new concept or environment? Is the student learning a complex environment? Do they need extra time to gain each skill? Is the student independently able to learn a new environment? Select the level that best describes the number of lessons a student needs to gain new skill. An important consideration: if this is a student's initial O&M IEP, Work with your IEP team to determine an appropriate score for this section. This will likely provide an outcome that increases the frequency of lessons and can help the student gain the skills in an appropriate time frame. Number 7, assistive technology tools. Select the level that best describes the student's instructional level with assistive technology tools, GPS, low vision aids, mobile applications, etc., while traveling in all environments. If a student is using their GPS well, but they need an occasional review of existing skills, they'd score a 1. However, if they need to be introduced to new AT, they'd score a 4.
Okay, so once you've scored all of the sections, a cumulative total will be given, which we have highlighted with a red ring. It's at the top of the section. It says total severity of needs score. Here you can see the number 15 is written in the total severity of needs score. You'll use the scoring information in the total severity of needs score area to determine your recommended direct service time. So we'll say the frequency of need table is on page 9 of the O&MSRS revised document, and it is used to determine the service delivery time. You'll write the service delivery time in part 3, which calculating suggested service times on page 11. In this case, 15 falls in the 13 to 20 point range of the total severity of need score, as indicated by the red circle. Then, if you look to the right of that range, you will see that the suggested frequency of need service time is for 1 to 2 times per week, 30 to 120 minutes each session. Please know that this is only for the direct service portion. This is also only a suggestion. It is the IEP team's responsibility to determine the time needed. Now, you aren't done yet. You may also want to consider if you need to add additional time for non-instructional services. Here, you'll complete part 2, additional considerations to support student success. In the additional considerations to support student success, there are 3 areas to consider. First, you'll consider material prep, drive time, and training site preview provided by the comms. Second, you'll consider communication with the student's team or pertinent individuals. The third area is training for parents, caregivers, or school personnel. The 3 areas are not all visible in the example on this slide, but they each have the same layout. The number of minutes for this will need to be decided by your team, but you can also determine if you do not need added time, or if the added time should be done yearly, quarterly, monthly, or weekly. You'll fill in the extra time that is needed and describe it in the notes area under each section. So for example, as shown by the red ovals, I might check yearly and monthly under consultation. I could do a yearly in-service for the school district and touch base monthly with the family, TVI, and general education staff to offer suggestion for skills to practice. Below the check boxes is where I will explain what the service is in the notes section. That is where I would enter the additional time needed to provide the service. Once this is completed, you will consider needed communication and material prep in the same way.
Thanks, Sarah. The final piece of the document is part 3. This is calculating suggested service time. When calculating suggested service time, first, as shown by the red circle, you'll transfer the frequency of need information to the table using the time frequency of service. Then you'll add up the additional considerations time. Again, you'll put that where the red circle is. Lastly, you'll put the suggested direct and suggested indirect times. Essentially, these are the same as the 2 boxes above. At the bottom of the document, you'll gather all the scores, and you can add a note of any service delivery considerations that should be made. For example, if you have a student who needs frequent breaks during a lesson, that will extend your time in a building for lessons, and you could note that. Once you've completed this section, you're finished. We'd love for you to get involved in providing feedback. Let us know if you're getting similar results from your previous service or similar results from the original O&M-SRS. After using the revised O&M-SRS, you can scan the QR code, which is located here on the right side of the screen, and answer a few quick questions. We ask that you make a commitment to use the scale on at least 3 students and be available to offer feedback. The form survey is located at https://forms.office.com/g/2 b k capital L b capital Z capital P capital U e9. Or you can scan that QR code on the right side of the slide. Thank you for joining us. Please let us know what additional questions you might have. You can always reach us through email. You can reach our director, Roxanne Belfour, at belfour@michigan.gov, or the education consultants, Johanna Brutban at brutbanj@michigan.gov, Sarah Crutchlow at crutchlows@michigan.gov, Dr. Amanda English at englisha1@michigan.gov, or Pat Love, lovep@michigan.gov. Or you can go to our website at https://www.rblv.org.
RBLV, Resource for Blind Low Vision. Learn more at rblv.org.